In Great Britain, the early 1800s were a time of political and economic turmoil. The Napoleonic Wars and the War of 1812 are followed by economic depression, resulting in famine and chronic unemployment. The first of the Corn Laws inflate the price of food, and thousands of pauper children roam the streets of London. The Luddites smash stocking frames. The army is used to break up peaceful demonstrations, and throughout the population there are demands for employment and political reform. This was the setting for the modern public revival of the flat earth idea, the brainchild of a travelling lecturer and quack doctor known by the pseudonym Parallax. Samuel Burley Rowbotham was born in 1816 in Didsbury, a small district on the outskirts of Manchester, England. The Rowbothams were a large family in surrounding Lancashire, with roots going back many centuries. Samuel's father was probably a middle-class merchant, and his mother's family, the Burleys, included many wealthy industrialists. The Burleys owned the Egyptian cotton mills in Manchester, and collaborated with the Scottish inventor Charles Mackintosh to produce the rubberized raincoats that still bear his name. In 1830 they helped establish the Manchester to Liverpool Railway to haul cotton from the Liverpool wharves to their mills. All that is known of Samuel's childhood comes from his own accounts. He was pious but rebellious, claiming to have first begun to doubt Newton at the age of 7. At Christmas time the following year, Samuel's school held a programme on the system of the universe, and the Rowbothams attended. The Newtonian nonsense so offended young Samuel that he and a friend tried to sneak out. They were caught, much to the embarrassment of his parents. Samuel's father caned him and transferred him to a different school. Shortly afterwards, the rebellious Samuel was sent to live with his paternal grandfather, who was something of a mathematician and a great admirer of Newton. He had a small scientific library, a large expensive orrery, and several telescopes. The old man showed his grandson some of the astronomical wonders to be seen with a telescope, including the mountains of the moon. Even then, Samuel was not convinced that the moon is a large and distant body. One day little Samuel stood between his grandfather's knees while the elder Rowbotham discussed the wonders of the universe with some friends. Finally the old man asked the boy if he was convinced. "Grandpa," he replied, "you make it sound very nice, but you don't prove what you say. You only talk and calculate. Some day when I get a big man, I will show you and all these gentlemen that you are wrong, and I will prove it. I will spend all my money and all my time doing it." Samuel noted that his grandfather's friends based their arguments against the Bible on the Newtonian system. As he grew older, Samuel studied the Bible with great diligence, and there he found confirmation of his astronomical suspicions. Samuel believed that the Bible clearly shows that the ancient Hebrews considered the earth flat and immovable and covered with the solid dome of the sky. Samuel decided it was either Newton or the Bible, and sometimes it seems he was not sure which. Again and again the feeling came over me that as the Newtonian system appeared so plausible and so grand in its extent and comprehensiveness, it might after all be correct, and if so there could be no heaven for man's future enjoyment, no higher existence than on this earth, no spiritual or immortal creatures, and therefore no God or Creator. As he matured, Rowbotham read widely the popular scientific literature, and he attended lectures on various aspects of science and politics. This is when he discovered and embraced the ideas of Robert Owen. Robert Owen was a Welsh social reformer and one of the founders of the utopian socialism and cooperative movement. Owen had once run a cotton mill in Manchester, where he was remembered for his management skill and benevolent policies, and improvements in cotton spinning machinery. So when he began preaching socialism, Owen found a ready following there. Rowbotham was one of many who attended Owen's Manchester lectures and found his political and economic ideas appealing. Though he never formally joined a local Owenite group, Rowbotham became a hanger-on, well known to many socialist leaders. With a broad but superficial knowledge of science, Rowbotham sometimes lectured Owenite groups on scientific topics, and we can see from reports in the Owenite newspaper, The New Moral World, that he proved to be a gifted speaker. It was his speaking ability that caught the attention of the leading Owenites and ultimately landed him the job as secretary and leader of an experimental Owenite community. Owen advocated a network of self-sufficient socialist colonies, but no one knew if this would work in practice. In August of 1838, William Hodson, a wealthy farmer, former Methodist lay preacher and supporter of Owen, decided to build an Owenite colony on his estate at Mainly Fenn in Cambridgeshire. Hodson believed Mainly Fenn's 200 acres could support 50 families, and he planned to build 50 houses plus a community building and workshops. These buildings would be heated by a central heating plant, and the colony would have its own steam engine to run its threshing machine and other equipment. To ensure the colony's self-sufficiency, the colonists would include members of all major trades. Hodson advertised in the Owenite paper The New Moral World for someone to run the colony. One applicant was 20-year-old Samuel Burley Rowbotham. Hodson was immediately impressed with Rowbotham. Orthodox Owenites tended to be free thinkers, but the former minister found that Rowbotham combined Christian fundamentalism with socialist enthusiasm. Rowbotham got the job, and the two began organising the community. Most Owenite leaders felt Hodson's community was hastily planned, underfunded, unsuitably located, and would be too small to survive, and the National Community Friendly Society would not endorse the project, as its failure would reflect badly on their ideology. Rowbotham responded by lecturing at some local Owenite branches, and was able to gain some support, somewhat to the annoyance of the Owenite leaders. The first colonists arrived at Mainly Fenn around Christmas of 1838, as one disgusted socialist later described it. They immediately commenced finding fault with one another and with everything about them. The colonists ate, drank and argued with enthusiasm, but they showed little for work. Rowbotham had chosen colonists for their religious orthodoxy rather than their personal character or useful skills. His recruits constantly fell out with the free-thinking Orthodox Owenites. The colony struggled through the winter of 1839 on subsidies provided by Hodson. The divisions among the colonists were papered over, and the necessary work somehow got done. In the spring the crops were planted, and some harmony was achieved, but this would not last. Rowbotham claims to have had a special agenda from the beginning. When he first saw Hodson's advertisement, he consulted a map of Cambridgeshire and noticed its many straight waterways cut to drain the surrounding marshland. Rowbotham saw them as ideally suited for testing the alleged curvature of the earth, and he was delighted to discover that the Mainly Fenn property was bordered by the Old Bedford Canal, a man-made river that runs perfectly straight for 12 miles from Welsh's Dam to the Old Bedford Bridge. It's not known exactly what experiments Rowbotham and the colonists perform in the summer of 1839, as his own accounts are contradictory. In one version he claimed that he sat in the water and observed with a telescope, a few inches above the surface, boats so far down the canal that they should have been out of sight behind the curvature of the earth. In another version, when the canal was frozen in the winter, he apparently laid flat on the ice with a telescope and spotted skaters at Welney 6 miles away, while in the summer he claimed to have seen village folk running in and out of the water, and even those who were swimming. In yet another version he claimed he had set up a surveyor's transit on a bridge and rigged 2 boats with tall masts carrying flags at the same height above the water as the crosshair of the surveyor's transit. The boats were dispatched in opposite directions on the canal, but the flags failed to drop below the line of sight, as required by spherical theory. Whatever the experiments, Rowbotham and a few others decided to make flat earth fundamentalism a tenet of the Cambridgeshire community, and that was the final straw. At a heated colony meeting, Rowbotham was shouted down and then voted out. When he refused to go, the council boarded up the door to his room. It was then that Rowbotham got his pistol, unloaded, he later claimed, and sent his opponents scurrying. Hodson supported Rowbotham, who then fired the entire council. Flushed with victory, Rowbotham arranged a series of flat earth lectures in the nearby town of March. When he returned from the first lecture, however, he found himself locked out again. This time Hodson wouldn't support him, and Rowbotham and 7 followers, undesirables he had recruited, were thrown out of the colony. Rowbotham and the exiles moved to nearby Wisbeach, where they organised another series of flat earth lectures. These were not successful, and soon the group left for London, where they disbanded. This marked the end of Rowbotham's time as an Owenite missionary, but he was to reinvent himself again and again. and his career as a flat earth activist had only just begun. He was soon to become modern history's most effective and infamous proponent of the flat earth idea, with a legacy lasting right up to the present day, while the old Bedford Canal would again be used to test Earth's rotundity as the site of one of the most notorious wagers in English history.